You're listening to Environmentally Speaking, a weekly podcast diving into legal matters surrounding the environment, public utilities, energy, zoning, and permitting laws in Rhode Island and the surrounding areas, with your host, Marisa Desautel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Environmentally Speaking.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisa Desautel, an environmental attorney.
And I'm Clarice. I'm coming in with our questions, topics, and comments for the pod. What are we talking about this week?
Well, hysterically, I didn't know what we were talking about this week. And I asked you, and you said, strain on the grid. And I said, great. What are we talking about? And you said, I don't know. This was your idea. So
that's a little behind the scenes of our planning and our process and how on top of it we can be sometimes.
I am organized as usual. So
weeks ago, you came up with the idea of strain on the grid and talking about what effects that have.
Because of the drought episode that we did, right?
Yeah.
Strain on natural resources, I think, is the umbrella topic for both of those issues. Drought is strain on groundwater and surface water, and strain on the grid refers to drought in power, in electric power and other sources of power. The grid generally refers to the infrastructure that a utility puts in place to provide power from the generator to the user.
Now, whenever I hear the grid, I always think specifically electricity. Yep. Am I thinking too small, or is it mainly when people say grid, they mainly talk about electricity?
That's right. They're mainly talking about electricity. And obviously, as the weather is warming up for summertime, people are turning up and turning on their air conditioners. So it's a supply and demand of electricity. The grid can become unstable when people are drawing more power at the same time. There's only so much power that everyone shares. So the grid is strained and doesn't, it's not as stable when it's under that much strain pressure.
What does that instability look like? I mean, I'm very fortunate in the sense that whenever we turn on our AC in the summer, I don't notice any difference in how we live the rest of our lives. So what does that strain look like? How does that instability affect people?
The most common example is a blackout, when the source of power cannot sustain the flow to each user. You just get, the grid just shuts down and you get a blackout. Some municipalities historically have put into effect these events called rolling blackouts. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yeah, I've heard of that term, but I don't fully know what that means. Is a rolling blackout a scheduled occurrence? Oh, so what does that look like?
It's a planned event where the utility will target a particular area, a municipality, and let everyone know that, Monday night from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., this particular area is not going to have power. And that, I don't understand the mechanics of it because I'm not an engineer, but that it's meant to create or bring back stability to the grid. Supply and demand thing that's
such a wild concept. I've never experienced a rolling blackout. I mean, obviously I think everybody's experienced times where you've lost power. Being in New England, I think we most often experience that during hurricane season or, during the winter time and there's too much snow on the lines or something like that. Yeah. But having a scheduled blackout is very interesting. And I almost wonder if it encourages folks to just leave that area for a little while.
Probably. Yeah.
Like if I'm not going to have power in my house, but the next town over will. Yeah,
maybe you just plan to go away if you have the money. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm
hasn't
just
happened in Rhode Island. I remember it happening in New York a few years ago. But as the climate change effects are becoming more pronounced, hotter summers are on their way. I mean, we're seeing it right now. This past month is
we had
was
90
the
days.
warmest that our area has seen in a long time. And it's only going to get worse. So the demand on the grid is only going to get more intense. So to combat that issue, government is trying to promote the use of renewable energy to supplement the grid, to supplement electricity. And one of the most contested methods in Rhode Island anyway are solar farms.
Why are they contested?
They're contested is because people are very concerned, and rightfully so, with habitat destruction. A lot of solar farms are sited on pieces of property that are forested because they require quite a bit of room, and there's not a lot of open paved parking lots available for solar in Rhode Island. So projects are being sited in rural areas and in areas that are forested, and they have to clear cut to put the solar panels in.
And you might not know the answer to this, but are people exploring the option of putting these solar panels on top of buildings?
Yes.
Because my first thought was, you said, opened paved areas. And I was thinking, sure, there's not a lot of that, but there are malls and shopping plazas. And I don't know much engineering wise, but that seems to be a decent amount of roof.
Yeah. And I'm not up on how much room and what type of topography you need. I don't know if having a flat
who knows
feature is important. I would assume it is. So maybe going on top of buildings at varied heights is not ideal. But the interesting argument that has come out of these solar farms, from my perspective, is the dichotomy between renewable energy. People assume that it's environmentally friendly. It's not. Renewable energy is something that we absolutely need at this point. We needed it decades ago, but in typical human fashion, we didn't really do anything about it until the last minute. And so the result is these renewable energy projects are being shoved down people's throats very quickly. And again, as is human nature, people don't like change. So they resist it, they freak out. And in the context of solar farms, they're freaking out because they are seeing forested habitat being clear cut or proposed for clear cutting. The corollary to that argument is, well, you'd rather have a renewable energy project there over a subdivision or a new housing development. So, what's the lesser of the two evils?
And it's really interesting that people think that way. I'd rather have the renewable energy than more development. But there's that third option that nobody's talking about of letting the habitat be maintained. Either way, it sounds like like you said, you're clear cutting, you're causing some harm to the current environment. That third option isn't even being discussed.
Right, because it's private property. And you can do whatever you want with your property, right? I mean, that's part of our foundation in this country. But the folks that are, me included, that are inclined to support habitat remaining, let's leave the forest where it is. No, I mean, unless you're proposing to buy that property and put a conservation easement on it, like I would have to go and buy that property. But no one's offering to do that. So it can get frustrating because we need renewable energy. We need upland habitat, and the money is not with the private objectors to these projects. The money is with the corporate interests. So
yeah,
property is going to be developed.
Yeah, which is, part of this podcast. It's a bummer resolution.
Yeah.
We are not the good news network you guys go to.
No.
One thing I will say that I've seen that is really positive is I'm sure for people who are kind of local to Mass and Rhode Island, along the 24, as if you're going into Boston, there's this giant hill that really is just trash. I affectionately call it Trash Mountain. It was a bunch of buried waste that they contained and covered up with dirt, similar to a Superfund that we've talked about in the past. But I've seen more and more of these, trash mountains, using air quotes, get solar farms on top of them.
Yeah.
Because there's just not much else you can do with it. You can't build a whole lot while things are decomposing and eroding and things like that. So it's one use of the space.
Yeah. And those are also very popular in Rhode Island. Landfill closures are often coupled with something called a beneficial use determination, where you can reuse a site for a particular purpose, even though it's considered contaminated. And that's exactly what you just said. What other use are you going to get out of this? It's an engineered cap over an old landfill. It's not like the public is invited to come and hike Trash Mountain. So yeah, it does make sense to reuse it if you can.
And now, do you think, from a personal opinion standpoint, do you really think that individuals putting solar panels on their home, do you think it has a big impact? Is it as helpful as the guy passing out flyers wants me to believe?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. It assists with something called distributed generation. Folks are saving on their utility bill. The grid is relieved to a certain extent. There are incentive programs where you can get refunded the cost of putting on a new roof or actually installing the solar panels. So I would say, cumulatively, anything you can do is helpful.
Yeah. And with any other
about getting solar panels?
I am. So our neighbors across the street are putting in solar panels, and not to make this sound like a keeping up with the Joneses thing, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that is a good idea. That's, there was a part of me that was really proud for them, even though I had no weight in that decision-making process and have no reason to be proud. But I was like, good for you guys doing something environmental. I liked it.
Have you looked into it at all?
I've not yet looked into it past all the flyers that the folks across the street keep giving us. So every time the installers come in to put in another facet, they put something like on top of our mailbox, just letting us know that they're here.
Hey, we're here.
They can help us too.
I would be interested to learn more about that arrangement. Like what exactly the incentive, tax incentive and reimbursement incentive programs are out there.
Yeah.
How long it takes. Do you need a new roof? That would be my concern. My house is really old. I'm like, great, let me get some solar panels. And the next thing I know,
they're in your living room.
In my bedroom. Yeah. So find out more.
All right. Maybe I won't actually talk to them. I'm a millennial. I'll Google it.
Fine.
But, I think kind of the takeaway here is, with everything, every little bit of conservation and recycling and alternative energy is helpful, but, we don't want to run into this blindly. You got to do some research and think about the impact that it'll have long-term.
Yes.
And it sounds like Rhode Island's getting more and more solar farms or looking into it. So we'll see how that all develops.
Yeah, especially in the rural parts of the state, because there's more land.
Yeah. So on that note, if you guys have any questions, comments, topics, if you have solar panels, tell us about what that was like for you. How did you install them? How did you make that decision? I'm being nosy and maybe I want you to do the research for me. But reach out to us at help@desautelesq.com. You can hit us up on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I saw recently there was a post for suggestions on how I can recycle better. So, I see you all. I see you all poking fun at me. It's fine. I'm recycling.
And nice job getting the email address correct.
Nailed it. Thank God this is an audio format. None of you saw my dancing.
No, actually, this is also video now.
Well, so. Just going to keep making fun of me.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Have a happy Friday.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Environmentally Speaking. If you're in need of an environmental attorney, we are here to help. Call us at 401-477-0023 or visit our website at www.desautelaw.com. That's www.desautelaw.com.